Oh, honey, come sit a spell right here on this old rocking chair beside me, 'cause I've got a story burning in my chest that I reckon needs telling before it's too late. It's about the day the world cracked open and swallowed my heart whole, the day we laid my Tommy to rest under that dripping Nebraska sky. Lordy, I can still feel the chill of that rain soaking through my black dress, mixing with the tears I couldn't hold back no more. Tommy was just 22, my baby boy, full of fire and dreams that stretched farther than the prairie winds. He had that lopsided grin, you know, the kind that lit up a room like fireworks on the 4th of July, and eyes bluer than Lake McConaughey after a summer storm. But the war, that godforsaken Vietnam tangle, snatched him away quicker than a fox in the henhouse, leaving me standing there with nothing but his dog tags dangling from my fingers, cold as ice against my skin. I remember driving to the base that morning, my hands shaking on the wheel of Billy's old pickup, the radio crackling with some somber tune about lost boys coming home in boxes. The chaplain met me at the door, his face longer than a country mile, and he said words I barely heard. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It was an ambush in the jungle." Ambush. What a fool word for the nightmare that took my son. Tommy had enlisted straight out of high school, talking big about defending freedom and making his old man proud, even though Billy grumbled about it over supper, saying it was all a politician's mess. I begged him not to go, honey, pleaded with him in the kitchen while the coffee percolated, but he just hugged me tight and whispered, "Mama, I'll be back before you miss me, and I'll bring stories that'll curl your toes." Lies, all sweet lies from a boy who didn't know better. Yeah, the funeral was a blur of neighbors in their Sunday best, bringing casseroles and condolences that felt like salt in the wound. Pastor Jenkins read from the good book something about valleys of shadow, but all I could think was how Tommy hated the dark, used to sleep with a flashlight under his pillow because of those ghost stories we'd spin on porch swings. His buddies from the service came too, young fellas with hollow eyes and purple hearts pinned crooked, sharing tales of how brave he was, hauling his platoon through mud and bullets. One of them, a skinny kid named Eddie, slipped me a letter Tommy wrote just days before, said it was for me if things went south. I didn't open it till that night alone in the house that echoed empty without his laughter bouncing off the walls. "Dear Mama," it started, "if you're reading this, I guess I ain't coming home. But don't you cry too hard, 'cause I lived free, and that's more than some folks get. Tell Rosie I love her, and kiss the grandkids for me." Broke me all over again. That did, crumpling me to the floor like a wilted cornstalk after the first frost. That lost, darling, it unearthed secrets I'd buried deeper than Grandpa's war medals in the attic. Tommy's going stirred up old ghosts from my own youth, the pains of World War II when Billy shipped out, leaving me with a belly full of Rosie and a farm to tend alone. And before that, the Depression days when we lost the house to the bank, scattering us like leaves in a gale. But through it all, there's been a thread of grit, the kind of small-town folks weave from nothing but hope and hard work. This story ain't just mine, it's every mama's quiet battle, every family's hidden scars. Stick with me now, 'cause the heartaches only get thicker from here, but so does the light at the end, the resilience that pulls you up when you think you're done for. If it touches you like it does me, share it with your kin. Maybe it'll mend a few fences in your world too. Oh, honey, if you're still with me after that heavy start, let's roll back the clock a ways to when life was all wide open fields and the smell of fresh baked biscuits wafting from the kitchen. I reckon I owe you the roots of this old tree, 'cause without knowing where I came from, the storms that hit later won't make a lick of sense. Born in 1942, smack in the middle of that big old World War II ruckus, in a dot-on-the-map town called Elmwood, Nebraska, the kind of place where everybody knows your business before you do. And the biggest excitement was the county fair coming to town with its Ferris wheel creaking under the stars. My folks named me Eleanor, but everyone just called me Ellie, even as a tot, 'cause I was always scampering around like a jackrabbit, too full of questions to sit still. Mama said I entered the world on a blustery March morning, hollering loud enough to wake the neighbors 3 farms over, while Daddy was already halfway across the Atlantic, dodging bullets in some foxhole he never talked about after. The farmhouse we called home was a weathered 2-story affair, built by Grandpa back when the sod was still fresh on the prairie. It sat on 100 acres of corn and wheat, but with the war raging, those fields felt more like a battlefield of their own. Ration books were our daily bread, stamps for sugar, coffee, even shoes, and Mama'd stretch every scrap like it was her sacred duty. She'd rise before the roosters, her hair pinned up in a kerchief, and fire up the wood stove for oatmeal thinned with water or biscuits made from whatever flour we could scrounge. "Ellie, darling," she'd say, her voice soft as corn silk, "we ain't got much, but we got each other, and that's richer than Rockefeller's pockets." Us kids, me, Jimmy, who was 8 and already bossing me around, and little Hank, just a toddler with chubby cheeks and a thumb-sucking habit, we'd cluster around the table, pretending our bowls were feasts fit for kings. Outside, the wind whispered secrets through the cottonwoods, and I'd chase fireflies at dusk, wondering if they were carrying messages from Daddy. Daddy's letters came sporadic, postmarked from places with names like Anzio and Bastogne, scribbled on onion skin paper that smelled of far-off rain. He'd tell us about the boys in his unit, calling them the fellas, and how they'd sing over there to keep spirits up amid the mud and the fear. But between the lines, there was a heaviness, like the weight of all those Liberty bonds we'd bought with our nickel allowances. Mama had read them aloud by the kerosene lamp, her eyes misty but her chin high, teaching us that worrying wouldn't bring him home any faster. The neighborhood women formed a quilting circle, Mrs. Harlan with her sharp-tongued Widow Jenkins, who lost her husband in the last war, and they'd stitch blankets for the Red Cross, gossiping about ration cheaters and pin-up girls in the papers. I tagged along sometimes, sitting on the floor with scraps of fabric, piecing together hexagons. That'll warm some soldiers' bones. It was our way of fighting back, you know. Small hands doing big work, turning thread into hope. But honey, the war touched us deeper than letters and stamps. Jimmy, my big brother, idolized those newsreels at the picture show. Tom mixed reading Herd on Japs or whatever the papers spun. He was all fire and fury, building forts from hay bales and marching us kids in parade. One summer, even in '44, when the corn was tasseling high, a Western Union boy bicycled up the lane, his cap tipped low. Mama knew before he spoke. Her face went white as milk. Jimmy'd snuck off to enlist, lying about his age, and shipped out to the Pacific Theater. Mama, I gotta do my part, he'd said in that last note, but it felt like a knife twisting in our guts. We waited weeks for word, the farmhouse echoing with Hank's whining and my silent tears. Then the telegram, Kia off Guadalcanal. Mama didn't break down, not then. She folded it neat as a church bulletin and went back to churning butter. But that night, I found her in the barn, rocking back and forth, whispering his name like a prayer. That loss carved a hollow in us all, the first real peak of sorrow in my young life, reminding that freedom came at a price steeper than any auction block. Schooling was a hike down a dirt road to the one-room schoolhouse where Miss Abigail ruled with a hickory stick and a heart of gold. We sat on benches scarred from generations, reciting pledges to the flag in arithmetic that seemed as endless as the plains. I loved the Red and Our Best, stories of pioneers crossing the Oregon Trail or Huckleberry Finn rafts down the Mississippi, escaping the worry now and at home. Hank and I made do without Jimmy. He'd take my hand on the walk, his little legs pumping to keep up, and we'd count hawks circling overhead, pretending they were watching over our brother. The town pulled together for the gold star in Mama's window, a black bordered banner for fallen sons, with potlucks at the Grange Hall where folks shared beans and yarns about better days. Victory gardens sprouted everywhere, carrots and tomatoes wrestled from rocky soil, and us kids collected scrap metal hauling wagon loads to the drive. It built something in me early on, that sense of pitching in, of resilience born from necessity. But underneath, questions brewed. Why did God take Jimmy? What secrets did the war hide from little girls like me? By VE Day in May '45, I was turning 3, but the celebrations felt distant, like echoes from a radio in the next county. Daddy made it home that fall, hitching a ride on a troop train, stepping off the bus with a duffel slung over his shoulder and a limp he tried to hide. He scooped me up, smelling of tobacco and train smoke, and whispered, "There's my Ellie girl, tougher than nails." But his eyes, oh, they were shadowed, haunted by things he'd seen in the hedgerows of France. He took to fixing fences and tinkering in the shed, avoiding the questions we didn't dare ask. Mama and him would sit on the porch at night, her head on his shoulder, talking low about the future, maybe selling the farm, moving to town for steady work. The war ended official-like with the atomic bombs and Japan's surrender, but for us, the real battles were just beginning. Rationing lifted slow, sugar hitting the shelves again, but prices soared like kites in a gale. Folks whispered about commies and cold wars brewing, but in Elmwood, we focused on rebuilding, planting new crops, welcoming home the wounded. Growing up in those post-war years, the 50s dawned shiny and full of promise, or so the magazine said. Elmwood sprouted a soda fountain at Hargrove's drugstore where I'd sneak dimes for cherry cokes, fizzing with bubbles that tickled my nose. Hank and I roamed free, fishing for perch in the creek with bamboo poles, or racing bikes down Main Street past the barbershop where old-timers chewed fat about Truman and the Korean fuss starting up. School got bigger, a consolidated building with indoor plumbing luxury. I took to writing poems in a notebook, scribbling about sunsets and lost brothers, dreaming of being a teacher or maybe a nurse like those gals in the war posters. Mama worked part-time at the co-op, wrapping parcels and keeping tally, her laugh coming back gradual like. Daddy found work at the grain elevator, hauling sacks that strained his back, but he whistled old Glenn Miller tunes to shake off the ghosts. Yet secrets simmered beneath the surface calm. One afternoon, rummaging in the attic for moth-eaten clothes, I found Daddy's footlocker unlocked for once, stuffed with yellow letters not from the war, but earlier from a gal named Ruth in Omaha. Love notes full of promises and heartache, hinting at a life before Mama. My stomach twisted. I shoved it back, but the knowledge stuck like burrs on wool. Was that why he paced some nights? Mama sensed my quiet, pulled me aside one evening while we snapped green beans and said, "Life's got its hiding places, Ellie, but love covers a multitude of them." Her words hung heavy, the first whisper of adult sorrows, building tension in my teenage heart. Around town, rumors swirled too. Mr. Peterson losing the farm to debts, or the preacher's wife running off with a salesman, reminding that even in apple pie America, cracks ran deep. By high school, Elmwood High, with its squeaky gym and Friday night football under the lights, I was blossoming into a gangly girl with braids and a crush on every boy in a Letterman jacket. The sock hops blasted Elvis and Buddy Holly, hips shaking the hound dog while chaperones clucked their tongues. Hank tagged along to games, cheering for the Cornhuskers even when they lost, his voice cracking with puberty. We lost Mama Sutton like in '57, a fever from the influenza that swept through like a thief. Daddy aged overnight, his hair graying faster than frost on pumpkins. The farmhouse felt colder without her humming hymns while ironing, and I took over the cooking, burning more suppers than not. That loss piqued my grief anew, honey, leaving me staring at the ceiling nights on end, wondering if resilience was just another word for surviving alone. But we muddled through, Daddy and Hank and me, leaning on church suppers and neighbors' kindness. The Korean armistice brought a sigh of relief. No more boys shipped out. But the world was changing, televisions flickering with Eisenhower's face, and talk of space races. I met Billy at 16 at the Harvest Festival where the air smelled of caramel apples and wood smoke. He was a farmhand from over in Willow Creek, broad-shouldered with hands rough as sandpaper and a laugh that boomed like thunder. We danced to blue suede shoes under string lights, his arm around my waist feeling like home. Courting was simple, picnics by the river, stolen kisses in his daddy's Chevy. By graduation in '60, we were hitched in the Methodist church, Mama's Bible on the altar, and Hank as best man grinning ear to ear. We set up house in a shotgun shack on the outskirts, Billy working the mill and me sewing dresses for extra cash. Rosie came first in '61, a squalling bundle with my eyes and Billy's nose, filling the rooms with her coos. Life hummed along. Post-war boom bringing new appliances, our first Frigidaire humming proud, and dreams of expansion, maybe a bigger place with room for more young'uns. But even in those halcyon days, undercurrents pulled. Billy'd come home bone-tired, eyes distant like daddies after the war, muttering about quotas and layoffs, whispering through the plant. Secrets. Well, I caught him staring at old photos once, a far-off look that spoke of things unsaid. And me. I kept Jimmy's dog tags tucked in a drawer, a talisman against more loss. The '60s loomed with civil rights marches on the news and youth questioning everything. But in Elmwood, we clung to traditions. 4th of July parades with firecrackers popping and flags snapping in the breeze. Tommy arrived in '62, our boy wrestling with Rosie from the cradle, his giggles the sweetest music. Yet, as the decade turned turbulent with Vietnam shadows lengthening, I felt the first tremors of bigger storms brewing. Little did I know, honey, the heartbreaks waiting just beyond the horizon, testing that resilience we'd built from cornfields and kin. Those early years shaped me, darling, taught me that joy and sorrow dance cheek to cheek, like at a barn raising where laughter mixes with sweat. From the war's long shadow to the warmth of family hearts, it's the USA spirit, resilient as the heartland soil, that carried us. But hold on tight, the struggles coming up twist harder than a twister in tornado season. Oh, honey, my early days painted a picture of sunny fields and family hugs. Well, buckle up, 'cause the road ahead got a whole lot bumpier, full of potholes that'll rattle your teeth loose. Life with Billy and the young'uns started sweet as honeysuckle in that little Elmwood shack, but the '60s came crashing like a herd of stampeding cattle, stirring up dust devils of change that no amount of sweeping could settle. Rosie was scampering about by then, 5 years old and bossy as a little general, organizing tea parties with the neighbor kids under the apple tree. Tommy, just a toddler with curls bouncing like springs, trailed after her, tugging at skirts and begging for stories. Billy swinging from the mill, his overalls dusted with flour, scooping them up for rides on his shoulders while I stirred gravy on the stove. We'd sit down to pot roast and mashed taters, radio humming with Buddy Holly tunes, talking about the new TV we'd saved for, black and white but magic all the same. Folks said it was the American dream, you know? Work hard, love deep, and the good Lord provide. But dreams, darling, they got a way of turning to nightmares when the world starts pulling at the seams. It hit us first in '63, that awful November when President Kennedy got shot down in Dallas. We were glued to the set, Rosie climbing in my lap with wide eyes, asking why the man's crying on the screen. Billy cursed under his breath. Dang shame, Ellie, the whole country's going to hell in a handbasket. Church was packed that Sunday. Everyone whispered about conspiracies and what it mean for us simple folk. But the real worry crept in slow like fog off the Platte River. The mill started laying off hands, talk of automation stealing jobs faster than a thief in the night. Billy came home one evening with his hat in his hands, face drawn like a bloodhound. They cut my hours, honey, he said, voice thick. Gotta tighten the belt. We made do skimping on extras, sending the kids to school, and hand-me-downs I'd patched a dozen times. But secrets started brewing too. I'd catch Billy staring at the one ass late at night or slipping out for a walk that smelled like the local tavern. I didn't press, not yet. Love's blindfold is thicker than burlap, but doubts gnawed at me like termites in the floorboards. Then the Vietnam whispers turned to roars. By '65, the news was full of boys coming home in body bags and draft notices peeling up like junk mail. Rosie, now school-age with braids and a sassy mouth, started asking questions about the protests she saw on TV, long-haired kids burning cars in the streets. Mama, why they fighting? She'd say, and I'd hush her, saying it was grown-up business. But it wasn't, not when Billy's number came up in the lottery. He was 35, exempt on paper with a family to feed, but the plant owner pulled strings to keep him. Can't lose good men to rice paddies, he grumbled. Still, the fear lingered, a shadow over our suppers. Tommy, growing tall and lanky, took to playing soldier in the backyard, barking orders at imaginary troops with a stick for a rifle. I'd watch from the kitchen window, heart squeezing tight, remembering Jimmy's grin before he shipped out. Resilience, we clung to it like a lifeline, joining the PTA bake sales and VFW meetings where vets swapped stories over coffee, their eyes hollow but hands steady on the flag. The first big crack came in '67 when Billy lost his job altogether. The mill shut down for retooling, but we knew better. Foreign competition flooding the market, making American wheat worth beans. He took to hauling hay for neighbors, rising before dawn in his beat-up Ford, coming back caked in sweat and frustration. Ain't right, Ellie, he'd mutter, pounding a fist on the table. Fought for this country, and now it's living us high and dry. Money dried up faster than a creek in July. We pawned Mama's brooch, skipped the church picnic to save on gas. Rosie started babysitting for pennies, her little face serious as she counted change into the cookie jar we called our rainy day fund. Tommy helped too, delivering papers on his bike, dodging dogs and dreaming of college scholarships. The strain showed. Billy's temper flared like dry tinder, yelling over nothing, then apologizing with wilting flowers from the ditch. I took in sewing, my fingers bleeding from the needle, stitching dresses till my eyes burned. Secrets piled higher. One night I found a lipstick smear on his collar, faint as a ghost, and my stomach dropped like a stone in the well. Was it nothing, or the unraveling of our vows? I swallowed it down, told myself we were in the trenches together, but the doubt festered, building to a quiet peak of mistrust that kept me awake, staring at the ceiling fan, whirring lazy-like. By '68, the whole nation's tetanus shot felt like ours, riots in the cities after Martin Luther King got gunned down, and then Bobby Kennedy, too. Elmwood stayed quiet, but the TV brought it home, showing flames and fury that made our troubles seem small. Billy enlisted in the National Guard, figuring it'd bring steady pay and keep him stateside. Drills took him away weekends, leaving me alone with the kids and the bills. Rosie turned rebellious, arguing about the war over breakfast, her eyes flashing like her daddy's when riled. It's wrong, Mama. All those boys dying for nothing. Tommy quieter, buried himself in books, talking about joining up to make a difference. I prayed against it, lighting candles at St. Mary's, begging for peace. But loss struck closer. Aunt Clara, Billy's sister, lost her boy to a car wreck on leave from Nam, drunk driving, they said. But grief don't care about reasons. We drove to the funeral in Lincoln, the kids subdued in the back seat, and I held Billy while he shook, his sobs muffled in my shoulder. Can't lose another Ellie, he whispered. That night built a peak of raw fear, reminding us how fragile the thread of family was, stretched thin over national chaos. The 70s rolled in with Nixon's resignation and gas lines stretching longer than a preacher's sermon, but for us, the struggles deep and personal. Billy got promoted at the Guard, but the extra hours meant less time at home, and the bottle called louder. I'd find empty bottles in the shed, his breath sour when he stumbled in late. Just unwinding, honey, he'd slur, but I saw the emptiness in his eyes, echoes of Daddy's post-war demons. Secrets spilled then. One evening, Rosie came home crying, saying she'd seen Daddy at the roadhouse with a waitress, arms round her waist. My world tilted. I confronted him in the kitchen, voice shaking as the kids slept upstairs. Billy, what's eating you? We vowed forever. He broke down, confessing the pressures, job fears, war guilt from friends lost, a flirtation born of loneliness. No affair, he swore, just dancing to forget. We cried together, forgiving fragile as china, but the trust cracked, living shards that cut deep. Resilience meant rebuilding, so we went to counseling at the church, pastor guiding us through prayers and talks that peeled back layers of hidden pains. Tommy hit his teens fierce, full of that restless energy, arguing with Billy over supper about the war winding down. By 72, he was dating a girl from school, sweet as pecan pie, talking marriage and moving out. But college dreams fizzled when scholarships dried up with the economy, inflation bitten like a rabid dog. Rosie married young at 19 to a fella from the next county, moving to Omaha for factory work. Her wedding was simple under the oak in our yard with cake I baked myself and tears in my eyes as she drove off. Take care of Daddy, Mama, she said, hugging tight. Empty nest hit hard. Billy and I rattled around the house, filling silence with what-ifs. Then Tommy announced his enlistment in 74, post-draft, but voluntary, eyes blazing with purpose. Gonna serve like Grandpa, make y'all proud. We begged, but he was set, shipping out to training camp with a duffel and a wave. Letters came steady at first, full of marches and buddies, but each stamp twisted my gut. The nation was healing from Watergate scars, bicentennial fireworks lighting the sky in 76, but for mamas like me, the dread peaked again. Another boy in harm's way, secrets of his own fears buried in boyish bravado. The late 70s brought farm crises, dust bowls of debt as corn prices tanked. Neighbors foreclosed left and right, tractors sitting idle like forgotten toys. Billy took a second job driving truck, hauling loads to Denver, gone days at a time. I'd pack his lunch with notes. Love you, come home safe, but loneliness crept in, mixing with worries about Tommy's deployments. He rotated to the DMZ, letters shorter, edgier, Youngle's hell, mama, but thinking of your apple pie keeps me going. One night in 78, a call came, not the worst, thank God, but Tommy wounded in a skirmish, shrapnel in his leg. We flew to the base hospital, first time on a plane for me, nerves jangling like keys. And there he was, pale but grinning, crutches propping him up. Missed the big action, but lived to tell, he joked. Holding his hand, feeling the calluses from his rifle, that peak of relief washed over us like spring rain, but it unearthed more secrets. His letters home hid the fear, the nights he wrote but tore up, doubting the cause. Billy and I drove home quieter, reflecting on our own hidden battles, the resilience forged in waiting rooms and worry beads. By the 80s, Reagan's in the White House talking morning in America, but for Heartland folks, it was more like noon in a drought. The recession hit Elmwood like a hammer. Factories shutting, unemployment lines snaking round the block. Billy's trucking gig dried up when fuel costs soared, and we lost the house payment, forced to sell the old farmhouse for a song. Moved to a trailer on the edge of town, Rosie and her hubby helping with the down payment, their own troubles mounting with a baby on the way. Tommy, discharged with honors and a limp, took mill work but chafed at the monotony, dating a gal named Linda who dreamed of California. Secrets bubbled up fierce. Billy confessed to gambling debts from poker nights, trying to win us out, leaving us scraping deeper. I worked double shifts at the diner, pouring coffee for out-of-work dads, their faces mirrors of Billy's defeat. Hang in there, hon, I'd say, but inside my heart ached like a bruised peach. The peak came in 82 when the recession clawed deepest. Tommy proposed to Linda a shotgun wedding because she was expecting, joy mixed with the bank's foreclosure notice on their starter home. We scraped for the ceremony potluck style at the park, but midway through vows, Billy collapsed, heart scared from stress, they said at the ER. Lying by his bed, machines beeping, I spilled my own secret, the letters from Ruth I'd found years back, how it haunted me. We all got ghosts, Billy, I whispered. He squeezed my hand, eyes wet. Forgive me, Ellie, for the drinking, the wandering eyes. That hospital vigil built to a raw crest of vulnerability, stripping us bare, but in the confessing we found glue to mend the cracks. We recovered slow, quitting the smoke's cold. And we rallied. Rosie had the baby, a girl named Hope, and Tommy's job steadied with overtime. National recovery trickled down, farms getting subsidies, but our resilience was personal, woven from apologies and second chances. Still, tragedies piled on. In '84, Hank, my little brother from childhood, passed sudden from a stroke, leaving his wife and kids in a lurch. We drove to the funeral, trailer swaying on the interstate, and I stood by the grave, echoes of Jimmy's service ringing in my ears. Secrets from the past surfaced there. Hank confessed in his last letter about Daddy's Omaha fling, how it had split the family quiet like. Keep it buried, sis, he'd written, but now it freed me, less weight on the soul. Tommy's marriage strained early. Linda wanted city lights, him tied to roots, led into fights that echoed our own. By '86, they split. Custody battles tearing at holidays, little hope shuttling between. I mediated baking cookies for neutral ground, but the heartbreak peaked in courtrooms, watching my boy break like waves on rocks. Mama, I messed up, he'd sob, and I'd hold him, reminding of our world double on rocks. Mama, I messed up, he'd sob, and I'd hold him, reminding of our world double on rocks on Mama. Mama, I messed up, he'd sob, and I'd hold him, reminding of our world double. The '80s wore on with AIDS scares on the news and Wall Street crashes, but Elmwood's recession lingered like bad coffee. Billy took security at the co-op, night shifts that aged him while I cleaned houses for cash, knees aching from scrubbing. Rosie's family grew, another boy, then divorced in '88, her coming home with the kids, trailer bursting at seams. Secrets. She admitted an affair during the marriage born of loneliness, mirroring Billy's slip. We talked it out over tea, no judging, just understanding how struggles twist good folks. Tommy rebounded, dating steady, but Vietnam scars showed nightmares waking him. Therapy he hid till caught. National themes wove in. The Gulf buildup had him volunteering again, training reservists, stirring old fears. One evening in '89, as the Berlin Wall fell on TV, we sat round the set toasting with Kool-Aid. World's changing, Ellie, Billy said, arm round me. But change brought peaks. Tommy's unit called up for Desert Shield, deploying to Saudi sands. Waiting for news at night, was torture letters coming from tent cities full of sand and resolve. Proud to serve, Mama, he'd write. But I saw the undercurrent, echoes of his wound. The ground war hit quick, scuds flying. And we glued to CNN, hearts and throats. Rosie paced with the grandkids, Hope now 8 and asking about her daddy. Then the call, safe, but Buddy lost to a mine. Relief crashed like thunder, but grief for the fallen peaked, reminding Vietnam's unfinished business. Billy and I drove to welcome him home, flags waving along the route and hugging him at the airport. Feeling his bones, I whispered, no more war, son. Secrets eased then. He opened about the jungle haunts, therapy helping unpack the load. Into the early '90s, recession echoes faded, but personal storms raged. Billy retired early on disability, back giving out, leaving me the main breadwinner at the diner till arthritis slowed me. Grandkids filled the gap. Hope school plays, little one's first steps, but health woes mounted. In '92, Rosie battled cancer, chemo leaving her frail as a bird. We rallied potlucks and prayers, my resilience stretched thin, nursing her through. She beat it narrow, peak of hope and remission scans, but it unearthed family secrets, her pa's hidden diabetes that took him young. Tommy married again to a nurse named Sarah, settling in town with a boy of their own. Life cycled, joys, pepper, and pains, but the thread held. By mid-'90s, Clinton years brought jobs back, Elmwood booming slight with a new factory, but '97 hit hard. Billy's heart gave full way, bypassed surgery that nearly took him. Lying in recovery, he confessed the deepest secret. A one-night slip in the '70s, no kid but regret eternal. Love you always, Ellie, he rasped. Forgiveness flowed easy then, years softening edges. Peak of reconciliation, mending old wounds. He pulled through, slower but wiser, us spending evenings on the porch, watching sunsets, sharing stories. Tommy's career steadied in logistics, grandkids multiplying, but Vietnam vets' reunions stirred his pains, groups helping heal collective scars. The millennium loomed. Y2K fears fading to nothing, but personal losses peaked anew. Rosie's cancer returned in '99, aggressive treatments failing. We gathered round her bed, hands linked, as she slipped away peaceful, whispering loves. Her funeral was springtime, flowers blooming, but grief hollowed me, echoes of Mom and Jimmy. Secrets. She left a box of letters, apologies to her ex, dreams for the kids, freeing us to honor her full. Tommy stepped up, helping with grandkids, his resilience mirroring mine. Billy held me through nights, our bond ironclad from decades of storms. Into the 2000s, 9/11 shook the nation like Pearl Harbor, flags prooting everywhere, young men enlisting again. Tommy's boy Jake talked military, stirring fears, but we talked him to college instead. Recession in '08 echoed the '80s, jobs vanishing, our fixed income tight. Health decline, my hips replacing, Billy's mind fogging with dementia hints. Secrets surface gentle. Jake found old photos asking about the Omaha letters, and I told true lessons in imperfection. Peaks came in small losses, friends passing, moves to assisted living, but hope flickered in family visits, barbecues under the stars. By 2010, Billy faded slow, Alzheimer's stealing memories, but not love. I'd remind him of dances, war survived, and he'd smile vague, holding my hand. His passing in 12 was quiet, home with us singing hymns. Grief peaked raw, but grandkids' hugs pulled me through. Resilience, a legacy passed down. Tommy cared for me now, his Vietnam strength shining, national woes, wars in Iraq, financial crashes, mirrored ours, but America's grit endured like ours. The tens brought changes, phones smarter than radios, world smaller. But my struggles peaked final in losing Tommy to that ambush in 18, waiting at 22 full circle heartbreak. Secrets? His letters revealed doubts about re-enlisting, love for Sarah and kids hidden under duty. Through it all, darling, tragedies built walls, but resilience tore them down. USA themes of sacrifice and comeback weaving our tale. Hold on, resolution's coming, brighter than a harvest moon. Oh, honey, if you've hung in there through all that heartache and hustle, the kind that make even the sturdiest oak bend, well, now's when the clouds part a smidge, letting in that warm glow of hope we've all been craving. Life don't just hand you sunshine after the storms. You gotta grab with both hands, plant your feet firm like a farmer after the rain, and watch it grow. For us in Elmwood, the 90s onward weren't no fairy tale, no sir, but they were the turning points where secrets loosened their grip, families mended fences busted by time and trouble, and that deep down resilience, the same grit that saw us through wars and recessions, started paying off in ways that filled the hollow spots. It's the American way, you know? Bouncing back from the mat, dusting off, and dancing again under them wide skies. Stick close, darling, because this part's got its peaks of joy every bit as powerful as the sorrows, reminding us why we keep going. After Billy's heart scare in '82, that hospital room with its beeping machines and sterile smells became our rock bottom, but honey, sometimes you gotta hit it to climb out. He came home frail as a newborn colt, propped on pillows with the doc's orders ringing in our ears. No more smokes, watch the salt. And for goodness sake, talk about what's eating you inside. We started small, just Edmund walks down the lane to the creek, his arm hooked in mine, the gravel crunching under our shoes like old friends. Ellie, he'd say, voice gravelly from disuse. I've been carrying too much alone, the mill worries, the what-ifs from Korea. I'd nod, sharing my own burdens like the shadow of them old letters from Ruth that I buried deeper than potatoes in winter. No blame, just truth spilling out gentle like washing clean the secrets that festered for years. By Christmas, he was tinkering in the shed again, fixing toys for the grandkids, and our first peak of real hope hit when he laughed full-bellied at Rosie's baby Hope's first steps, wobbling across the living room rug. It wasn't magic, but it was mending, stitch by stitch, like the quilts Mama taught me to make. The '80s recession eased slow, like molasses in January, but with Reagan's tax cuts and farm aid trickling down, Elmwood perked up. Billy landed that security gig at the co-op, steady hours that let him come home for suppers again, no more late nights hauling regrets. I cut back on cleaning houses, my knees thanking me, and we pooled our checks to pay off the trailer, owning a piece of ground outright for the first time since the farmhouse. Tommy's marriage to Linda held shaky at first, but counseling, the kind with a pastor who knew his onions, helped him navigate the bumps. She softened on the city dreams, settling into a routine with baby Hope, and Tommy threw himself into work, rising to foreman at the mill. One Sunday in '85, we had a family barbecue under the big elm in the park, smoke rising from the grill with burgers sizzling and kids chasing each other. Billy raised a glass of lemonade, no booze since the scare, and toasted to second chances and sticking together. That gathering peaked with laughter echoing off the trees, a quiet resolution to the '70s chaos, where we'd all learned that family ain't perfect, but it's worth the fight. Secrets. They faded as we shared more, like Tommy admitting his Vietnam fears to his own boy, turning pain into lessons for the next generation. Rosie's cancer battle in the early 90s tested us fierce, but honey, that was when resilience shone brightest, pulling our scattered kin back to the fold. She'd beat it once, but the comeback in 92 brought her home to the trailer, frail and fierce-eyed, refusing to let it win. We turned the spare room into her nest with quilts from the church ladies and my chicken soup simmering daily. Tommy drove in from work every evening, Honk's widow. Aunt May now sending care packages from Lincoln, and even Linda pitched in watching the kids so Rosie could rest. Medical bills piled high as haystacks, but community stepped up. A benefit supper at the Grange Hall, folks donating pies and dollars, raising enough for treatments without breaking us. Dr. Holland, the same fellow who'd patched Billy's heart, monitored her close, and by spring 93, scans showed clear remission again, stronger than before. Rosie hugged me tight in the kitchen that day, tears mixing with her whisper, "Couldn't have done it without you, Mama." The peak came at a family picnic that summer, her color back and laugh ringing true, chasing hope and the little ones through the grass. It resolved her health scare into a testament of hope, unearthing the last of our family secrets. She confessed the divorce pain she'd hidden, how it stemmed from her own young mistakes, mirroring Billy's slips. We forgave round the table, bonds tighter than ever, proving that national recoveries like the post-Cold War boom echoed in our personal healings. As the 90s hummed along with grunge on the radio and computers creeping into homes, Billy and I found our groove in the golden years. He retired full in 95, drawing a pension that let us travel a bit, a bus trip to the Badlands, where we held hands watching sunsets that painted the rocks like fire. His mind sharpened with puzzles and church bingo, the dementia hints from stress fading away. We joined a seniors group, swapping stories of wars past and grandkids present, turning old ghosts into badges of survival. Tommy's second marriage to Sarah bloomed steady. She was a rock, a nurse with gentle hands and a quick wit, helping him unpack them. Vietnam boxes he'd kept locked. Their boy Jake, born in 94, brought fresh joy, a spitting image of Tommy with Rosie's curiosity. Jake's baptism in 94 was a high point, the church filled with kin, Billy tearing up as he held the baby, whispering prayers for peace. Secrets resolved there too. Tommy shared his shrapnel scar stories with Jake as he grew, teaching early that bravery includes asking for help. Life felt full, darling, with holidays glowing, Thanksgiving turkey stuffing us silly, Christmas lights twinkling on the trailer like stars brought low. But resolution ain't without its ripples. The 2000s tested that newfound peace with national shakes that hit close. When 9/11 towers fell, we watched horrified from the couch, Billy's hand clenching mine like in double-worded newsreels. Flags sprouted on every porch in Elmwood, and young Jake, just 7, asked solemn questions about bad men and heroes. Tommy, with his service background, volunteered at the VFW, counseling enlistees and sending care packages to troops overseas. It stirred his old wounds, but therapy groups, now common as church suppers, helped him resolve the unfinished Vietnam business, writing letters to fallen buddies' families that brought closure. Rosie, cancer-free and remarried to a kind widower named Frank in '03, started a support group for survivors, turning her pain into purpose. Her wedding that year was simple, backyard vows with wildflowers, and holding her hand as she danced with Frank. I saw the full circle, from her rebellious teens to this hopeful woman, secrets of past affairs forgiven and forgotten in the joy. Peak came at a family reunion in '05, all under one tent. Grandkids running wild, great-grandbaby on the way from hope, laughter drowning out the world's worries. We shared stories round the fire, Billy recounting the Gulf War welcome, how Tommy's safe return mirrored Daddy's from Europe. It wove our personal resolutions with America's, showing how national unity bolsters the homefront heart. Billy's health dipped again in the late 2000s. That cough turned into something the doc called chronic, but we faced it head on. No, he didn't. Hospice talks came early, but he rallied with treatments and our stubborn love, living to see Jake graduate high school in '11. That ceremony, caps tossing in the gym air, was a peak of pride. Jake heading to community college on a scholarship, promising no enlistment like his dad begged. Billy, in his wheelchair, clapped till his hands hurt, whispering to me, "We did good, Ellie. Raised them resilient. Secrets?" In quiet moments, he shared the full tale of his 70s gambling, how it had stemmed from post-war guilt over not fighting in Korea, and I absolved him finally like our bond unbreakable. Rosie and Frank moved closer, helping with care, while Tommy and Sarah built an addition to their house for visits. The '08 recession nipped at heels again, gas prices soaring, jobs shaking, but we'd learned community gardens sprouted, potlucks fed the needy, and our family pitched in, Jake working summers to ease the load. Hope, now grown with her own little ones, echoed the cycle. Her divorce resolved, amicable custody shared smooth. It all built to a hopeful crest into the 2010s as smartphones buzzed and the world spun faster. My own steps slowed, hips aching from decades of dancing through storms. Billy passed gentle in 2012, slipping away in his sleep with my hand in his, the room filled with grandkids' photos on the walls. The funeral was spring sunshine, Elmwood turning out in force, testimonies pouring about his quiet strength. Grief peaked raw those first months, echoing Tommy's loss yet to come, but resolution bloomed in the empty spaces. I moved in with Tommy and Sarah, their home a haven with ramps and laughter. Jake, now in trade school for mechanics, fixed my old Chevy, symbolizing the handing off of grit. Rosie battled a minor health scare in 15, but caught early, resolving quick with doc visits and family cheer. Secrets from her youth. She wrote a memoir for the kids, honest pages about mistakes and growth, freeing the next gen from inherited weights. National Healing Mirrored Hours, post-recession recovery, bringing jobs to Elmwood's new wind farm, turbines whirring like promises. Tommy mentored at the VFW, helping Iraq vets unpack their loads, his own Vietnam closure complete and shared stories. The biggest turn, though, honey, came after Tommy's passing in 2018. That ambush stealing him at 22, waiting, no, he was older by then, waiting, my mistake. He was 46, full of life still, but the jungle claimed him late in an advisory role, echoes of youth. The pain crested like nothing before, leaving me hollow as a cornstalk after harvest. But resolution unfolded slow and sure. Sarah and the kids rallied round, Jake stepping up as the man of the house, Hope's family driving weekly for pies and talks. We held a memorial at the VFW, vets sharing Tommy's laughs and leadership, turning loss into legacy. Secrets from his letters, doubts about that last tour, love notes to the kids. We read together, crying then healing, resolving to honor him by living bold. I started recording these stories on a little tape machine. Sarah got me for the great-grandkids, passing resilience like mama's recipes. Peaks dotted the years after. Jake's wedding in 2020, simple amid pandemic worries, with masks but hugs aplenty. Rosie's great-grandbaby born in 22, a girl named Ellie after me, her giggles filling the trailer when I visited. Now at 83, sitting on this porch with the wind chimes tinkling soft, I look back and see the threads, WWII separations resolving in homecomings, Vietnam griefs and therapies and talks, recession busts and community lifts. We've grown, darling, from secrets buried to truths shared, tragedies to triumphs small but mighty. Hope ain't the absence of hurt, it's rising anyway, like corn after drought. My family's scattered but tied tight. Rosie in her cozy house with Frank. Jake building a life in town. Hope's crew visiting with stories of their own. The USA's changed too, from wars to wonders, but that heartland spirit endures, pulling us through. If this tale stirred your soul like mine, share it with your loved ones. Maybe it'll spark a conversation, mend a hurt, or just remind them they're not alone. Life's too short for silent sorrows. Let's keep the light burning bright. Oh, honey, as I rock here on this creaky porch swing, the sun dipping low over the Nebraska hills like it does every evening, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I can't help but let my mind wander back through all them twists and turns we've shared. 83 years, darling, that's a heap of living, more laughter than tears, I reckon, though the sorrows sure carved their paths deep. Sitting here with a cup of chamomile steaming in my lap, the grandkids' voices echoing faint from the backyard where they're chasing fireflies. I feel that quiet peace settling in, the kind earned from weathers and storms that uproot lesser folks. Life's been a patchwork quilt, you know? Patches of joy stitched to heartache, secrets to truths, all held together by that unyielding thread of resilience us heartland gals are made from. If there's one thing this old heart's learned, it's that the USA spirit, forged in wars and woes, revivals and recoveries, mirrors our own, reminding us we're tougher than we know. Looking back, the heartbreaks hit hardest, don't they? Lonesome Jimmy in that Pacific mud, Tommy to Vietnam shadows, Billy to the slow fade of time, each one a gut punch that left me gasping for air. And the secrets, oh lordy, they wait like anchors. Daddy's hidden letters, Billy's wandering ways, even my own doubts buried under smiles. Back in the Depression days when we scraped by on cornbread and hope, I wondered if we'd ever see plenty. WWII took the men, leaving us women to hold the fort, rolling bandages and rationing dreams. Vietnam? That one shredded families, turning boys into ghosts and mamas into worrywarts. The recessions 80s and '08 alike stripped us bare, foreclosing homes and pride, but they taught me something vital. Grit ain't born in easy times. It's hammered out in the forge of necessity. We small-town folks, we lean on neighbors, on church suppers and shared burdens, building back stronger, much like the nation did after Pearl Harbor or the financial crashes. Folks say America's exceptional for its comebacks, and honey, I see that in every sunrise after a twister, we dust off, hug tight, and keep planting. Yet for all the dark valleys, the peaks of light shine brightest in memory. Remember those family gatherings? Rosie's wedding under the oak, Hope's first giggle filling the trailer like music from heaven, Jake's graduation cap sailing high, moments that glued the broken pieces. Reconciliation, that's the sweetest balm. Billy and me spilling truths in that hospital room, forgiving slips from decades past. Tommy opening up about his scars, turning pain into bridges for his kids. Secrets lose their sting when they are darling, like opening windows to let fresh air chase the dust. I've watched my kin grow through it, Rosie from rebellious teen to pillar of strength, her support group helping other survivors, Tommy mentoring vets, passing resilience like a baton. Even national tides lifted us, post-war booms bringing appliances and hope, Reagan's optimism echoing our own recoveries. The internet now connecting grandkids across states for video calls that warm this old soul. It's hopeful, this cycle, tragedies build character, secrets forge honesty and resilience. That's the legacy, the quiet power that says you can rise, one step at a time. If I could whisper to my younger self, kneeling in the cornfields praying for rain or daddy's safe return, I'd say, hold on, Ellie girl, the hurt don't last forever, but the love does. Life's not fair, no ma'am. It dishes out losses fiercer than a prairie blizzard, but it's rich in the redemptions, the unexpected joys that sneak up like a rainbow after the pour. Us grandmas, we're the keepers of stories, the ones who remind that World War II sacrifices led to freedoms we cherish. Vietnam griefs birthed peace movements. Recessions sparked innovations. My family's a microcosm of that American tale. From farmhouse hardships to trailer triumphs, we've woven wars and woes into a tapestry of endurance. Hope ain't wishful thinking, it's the choice to plant seeds in rocky soil knowing they'll sprout. And darling, if this rambling tale from an old gal's touched a chord in your heart, stirred memories, or mended a wee bit of your own fences, do me a favor and share with your kin. Pass on the stories, hug them tight, cause in sharing, we heal together, keeping that resilient light burning for the generations coming up. The world's full of troubles, but with love and grit, we weather them all. Now scoot on home before the dew falls. Sweet dreams and God bless.